Hello and welcome to this AFL High Performance monthly update. This will be specifically for Australian rules footballers that are in off season and they've started their 2025 campaign. So I would usually recommend, so for the overlap of audio there, recommend for those that have had a fair few preseasons under their belt and you play deep into September, make sure you have at least a week off structured training. For those that have been playing and you're 30 years plus, or perhaps you just had a really challenging year from a motivation point of view, give yourself 2 weeks of unstructured training. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't go for runs, you can't go to like local classes with friends or your partner. It just means that there's no set rigid plan, no training program that you're following. And that's really important just to fill up your motivation cup for what we know with Australian rules football is a really long and tough, challenging preseason. So we want to make sure that you're getting the most out of that from a quality point of view, and that you're not just going through the motions. So off season, a big part of it. Let's say you've got 8 weeks until preseason starts. Typically, most of you guys listening will be starting middle of November or late November. So you'll have around 8 weeks of no structured football training. I would recommend 2 weeks of just doing what you feel like almost on the given day. So if you wake up and you're really keen to go for a run and it's a beautiful day, absolutely go for it. If you're keen to have a gig of the footy, go for it. But don't feel like you should feel compelled to follow a set plan. Then from there, and I'll show my one of the examples of our off-season program as a reference. So for those watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see, and if you're listening to the podcast audio, I would recommend going to the YouTube version just to get a bit of an insight on some of the key pillars of our off-season program. But the first key pillar is regeneration, mentally and physically, and probably more mentally is the most important part. Physically, we know the body can handle the load, but it's the mental side that's really important. And it's the best time of year to have time off because you're furthest away from playing games that matter. Okay, so best time, take it, have your 1 or 2 weeks of non-structured training. Then you want to start to build up. So then I would suggest a 2-week gradual build. That might look like 2 runs a week on, let's say, Monday and Friday, and 3 total body gym sessions where you're getting in, you're reintroducing load again. You might be doing some low-level plyometrics as well, just work on your stiffness, elastic qualities, working the body up, getting back. Your running volumes can be around 4 to 5K, both more aerobic focus, so not necessarily a lot of speed or high intensity. You're just waking the body up again for a couple of weeks. So there's a pretty low-level month, the first 4 weeks of your program. Then for the next 4 weeks, we want to start preparing the body gradually towards football. So that means we want to introduce sprinting at above 90%. We want to introduce high-intensity change direction, reactive agility. We want to introduce a solid strength block, a linear periodized block where you're increasing your loads each week on your key lifts, like your bench press, your back squat, and trap bar deadlift, perhaps like a weighted chin up or a bench pull. And we want to ensure that we're building and retaining some of the muscle mass that you lost from the season, and then you've lost from not having structured progressive overload, no gym resistance or no consistent gym resistance over the last couple of weeks. So no doubt you're probably at the lightest from a muscle mass point of view. So starting to get that lean muscle mass back up to prepare for the contest side of football, as well as just strengthen up your ligaments, tendons, and everything ready for more high intensity work that you're going to in your preseason block. So if you're listening on Instagram, jump over to my YouTube channel for what I'll do is I'll share our program. So you can see this here. This is an example of our strength and power program. So we have 3 different gym programs. We've got our strength and power for those that I speak to that want to work on explosive strength. So they want to improve their acceleration. They want to improve their ability to fend off opponents. So they're typically, these guys, they're quite, their training age is quite high. So they're all guys and girls, they've been lifting in the weights room for a while. Their technique is competent. And they're at the more pointy end of their strength and conditioning. So we're really focusing on, more the power side, not putting on necessarily too much muscle mass, but improving their maximal strength and their power. We've also got an athlete development strength program. Okay, so that's focused for those new to the gym. And then we've got a gainers program, which has some more volume across the week, particularly around the trunk. So they'll have typically 4 sessions a week, when the strength and power and development program 3. All right, so this would be after your 1 or 2 weeks off. There's no running in this week. So for those that had a week off, this would be their second week, and they want to get into some structure. They would start second week of some plyometrics and gym. For those that want to have 2 weeks off running, but they want to get into some gym, they can start this on their second week. And then for those that want to have 2 weeks fully off, this would be their first week back. So week 3 of their off season. So we've got some low level amplitude plyometrics, some repeat jumps. We're working on double leg, and you're just working on being reactive, elastic. So double leg jumps that are continuous, 3 sets 10, 3 sets of 6 single leg hops, mainly focusing on short contacts with the ground. So working on that stiffness quality, and then three 30-second skipping sets just to work on rhythm, low amplitude plyometrics. So that's just waking up the nervous system, getting the body ready for more high intensity tasks that are coming in the program over the next couple of weeks. From a strength point of view, as you can see, there's a superset, which I typically don't do a lot when we're working for high intensity, but I think for volume and off season, where we want to respect the athlete's time. So we don't want the athletes in the gym for longer than 45 minutes ideally. Then supersets can be great because you can tick a lot of boxes, get the body moving, and we're not doing high intensity. So the nervous system really isn't being challenged that much that we can almost afford to do this during this phase where we're essentially just reintroducing movements. It's more of like a moderate volume phase, low intensity sort of phase. So goblet squat suited with dumbbell bench press, reverse lunge with the single leg RDL, so some unilateral work. This is a great time if you're doing more of a bit of a bodybuilding phase where we can increase the time under tension and also work on some stability. So I love unilateral, both single arm, single leg at this time of year, just to balance up the body and work. So if you've got a huge gap, let's say 30% difference or 20% difference between left and right, either with arms or legs, this can be a great opportunity to try and bridge that gap. And single arm rows, then we've got a bit of starting to introduce some injury mitigation. So the Nordics with some dumbbell reverse flies, and then a bit of a beachies sort of set for those that want to work on getting a bit of a pump. So horizontal pull-ups, decline push-ups, dumbbell arrays, and some tricep extensions. Wednesdays, as you can see, is just purely upper body, seated rows. We've got some glute work in there as well, and some trunk work, so some core work, and a little bit of the hamstrings with the good morning. And then Friday, another dose of that low-level plyometrics, all double leg with the single leg hops as well in there. And then introducing our strength lift for the week, which is just the barbell box squat. 4 sets of 4, start light, and just work on working on your range of motion. So if you're like a 22-inch box squat in season, look just to challenge yourself and see if you can increase your strength through range this phase. The focus is a bit more hypertrophy. The focus is building up your technique. So this is a good opportunity to work on strength through end range. So I would recommend like 20-inch, let's just say, as long as your feet are staying flat and your pelvis staying in a good position, spine staying in good position, see if you can challenge yourself that way. Naturally, the weight will be a little bit lighter, and that's okay for this time because we want to build over weeks to come. Some face pulls, supersetted with a box squat, RDLs, wide lat pull down, our incline dumbbell bench press, and another unilateral lift with our dumbbell step up, and then some arms and core to finish. So that's week 1 of off season. Week 2, we start to bring in some running. I've got some optional testing in there for those that haven't been on our program that are starting with us. which is it's quite a common, popular time for people to join us in the off season. They start their annual program. So if they haven't got any data, their club didn't use GPS, then I'll get them to work up to a max velocity sprint. Now, if you haven't sprinted for 3 weeks, I wouldn't expect you to open up and go as fast as you can, but just go to where you're comfortable, around that 90%. But I want to send you an individualized running program, and I need that metric. So just go to where you're comfortable, as it's prefaced in the program. Same thing for the aerobic test. So you pick one of them, 2K time trial or your 6-minute aerobic capacity test. And that's purely there for me to work out an individual metric regarding your aerobic capacity. So just like with the strength lifts, we work off your individualized max and give you targets to follow for your working sets. The same thing happens, and I'll show in a sec what it looks like with your running program. If you're running aerobic tempo for 30 seconds, that could look very different if you've got a 6-minute 2K compared to someone who has an 8-minute 2K in the distance that you want to get in that 30-second rep, for example. So I'll run through that shortly. But as you can see, we've got 2 running sessions in this week for week 1 of the running plan. Now, if you did that, if you've already got that data from last year and you're pretty confident on what you would get on the 2K time trial, you know where you're roughly at, then you can just send me through those times and just complete the 15-minute fartlek instead for your running load session for that day. Gym program is very similar to the week prior, not a lot of changes there. So we're just introducing the running. But what you can see is that we're working, like I said, we want to work on strength through range. So it's not a box squat this week. We're building in a back squat. So you're working, there's no box there to control your range. We just got a free squat. And that's because we want to try and improve your strength through deeper ranges of motion. All right, the box is great for consistency and for strength and for power. But in this block, we're working on a little bit of hypertrophy. So I think working through the deepest range that you can possibly squat, the better. So we'll take the box away. And you should have a good reference point to how deep you can squat from the week prior. Week 3, still 2 run sessions a week. So we've got aerobic fartlek at the start of the week with a more repeat speed session. So starting to introduce some shorter efforts, 85-meter efforts, and has some threshold running with a 2-minute max distance run. And the gym program is very similar to the week prior, working on that volume. Then, as you can see now, week 4, we're starting to get into more what a preseason program will start to look like. So 3 sessions a week. Typically, there's a bit of a mix between the sessions. So we're getting some change of direction work coming in on the last session of the week. That's why you've had a couple of days off before that session. So here we've got a Monday lower body session. The back squats now moved to the Monday because we're bringing chap bar deadlifts in at the end of the week. All right, so 2 key lifts for our strength. So Monday we run, then we've got our lower body strength lift. And as you can see, there's been some evolution of the exercises there. Tuesday is an upper body day. Wednesday is a power session, and it's optional if you want to complete that power session prior to your field session. It should only take you 25 minutes for this power session. And for some of you that like doing the primes during the year before game day, you might like doing this power session to potentiate you for that speed day. So we're starting to work on some sprinting on this Wednesday. So if you want to do it beforehand, that's up to you. And then a couple of days off before Saturday, where we're getting into our biggest session of the week, both on the field as well as the bringing the deadlifts in and hitting the posterior chain with your Nordics and your RDLs at the back end of the week. Then week 4, we've got we'll hold with that 3 running sessions a week. We're retesting your sprint, your max velocity sprint, to see if any progress we've had with the stiffness work we've been working in the gym with your plyometrics, as well as just by having a couple of weeks of speed under your belt, just to see where you're at and if we need to update your individualized calendar. Where we prescribe the sprint, which I'll show you now, is for your repeat speed session, because as we know, repeat speed's more anaerobic dominant, it's not aerobic. So we don't want to take into account your aerobic test, like your 2K time trial, for your repeat speed. We want to use your aerobic time trial because that's more threshold based, and take into account your max velocity. And then we work out your anaerobic speed reserve from that. So essentially here you've got targets that you'll follow. So this is an example of an athlete. The green is for their aerobic, where they're running it anywhere between 10 and 20% slower than their 2K time trial pace for those distances. So an example would be, let's say a program 90% and you're going for 90-second reps. You would be trying to get to 400 meters in those reps, for example. If I program threshold efforts at 100% and they were 60-second reps, then that person would be aiming for 300 meters in that 60-second rep. If it was a, let's say a 20-second repeat speed effort at 130%, this person would be aiming for 120 meters in that 20-second rep. Yeah, so that's just an example, just to be objective and individualized, so that every athlete following our program gets access to this, as long as you have your testing data. And like I said, if you don't have the test, just complete the test in the program. Training becomes testing that way. The real evolution there from a strength and power point of view is that we're just starting to build in that linear periodization. So what you lifted the week prior will be slightly heavier this week for your for your back squat and for your deadlift. And as we can see now, we've got that unilateral sort of hypertrophy phase that's come in. Now we're bringing in the barbell bench press on the Tuesday. So starting to work on your max strength from a body point of view. For week 5 and week 6, so moving into November now, the running sessions are starting to really pick up. We've got football sessions involved now. So there's some prescribed kicking, ground balls and marking and kicking on the move, as well as some prescribed agility sessions for those 3 sessions a week to get you used to. Typically pre-season for VFL level, AFL level will be 3 times a week. And also at local level, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So we want to start getting used to that, particularly for your groins and your calves. So lots of accelerations, change direction work as part of your conditioning. And also for your quads, we want the kicking volume starting to pick up. So if you're getting a good, 30 to 40 kicks each session, now you're getting well over 100 a week. That will prepare you well for when you return back to football preseason training, where no doubt the coaches are going to want to work on skill acquisition and the technical side before moving to the tactical sort of gameplay work. So you want to make sure you are ready for that phase, and you don't want to do self-harm when you return back. So really important, change of direction, sprinting and kicking in this next 2 weeks. All right, and as you can see here, we've added in an extra strength program, which is optional. Which is more for those that want to work on explosive power. That's on the Tuesday, and then their max strength as well on the Thursday. Same thing, progressive overload for the key lifts, the bench press, the back squat, and the deadlift. So we've got an extra set there, and then the reps have come down from 5s to 4s. So you can lift a little bit heavier. Hopefully that provides you a good framework. If you want to join our program, we have a 14-day free trial. So click the link in the show notes to check that out, or you can head straight to 𝐏𝐫𝐞𝐿 and join our program there. We've also got our coaches that are starting to fill up their schedule. So if you want to work with one of our coaches and get the AFL experience with one-on-one training, make sure to direct message me or email me at jack@𝐏𝐫𝐞𝐿. And really important that you get in early. The peak time is October, November, December, because everyone is going into preseason mode. So if you can get in a couple of weeks ahead, they'll allow you to get that prime time slot that works in around your school or work commitments. For the off-season training, the analogy I want to go with is for pro athlete development, it's like trying to get a tan. So there's no such thing as a quick tan. And I'm sure if you've tried this in the past, you've got yourself burnt. And that's the equivalent of there's no quick gains, the equivalent of just going out in the sun day 1 of summer when you're bleach white and getting burnt and losing any tan that you developed and going red and not being able to get into the sun for a few days is the exact same as getting an injury through ramping up your intensity. So be patient. If you've taken a couple of weeks off, you need to reload the body gradually. And also what we know that the preseason program will ramp up in intensity when you get back to your football club. So you don't need to be smashing yourself into the ground in October. Focus on quality, focus on really getting the body. If they had some niggles, we want to make sure we deal with those. So you're going into your preseason, pre-Christmas block, really healthy and feeling good, both motivation and from a physical point of view. That is critical. That's probably the number one focus. But the second area of focus is identify an area that's going to help you maximize your performance in 2025. So were you easy to get pushed off the ball in your contest? So maybe your strength is something where you're just putting in an extra 10% effort to this time last year. Perhaps your aerobic capacity, your decrement between first quarter to fourth was really significant, and you needed more rotations in the second half. So then the aerobic running, just put in a little bit more extra effort there and extra focus on that, and really reflect on every session. Get a journal out. How did that session go? What were some areas that went well? What were some areas you can improve? And what's your focus for your next session? Really, really important. We don't want to be going through the motions. You don't want to be just doing the work for the sake of it. Make sure there's strong purpose, there's strong focus, and you're really clear on what you're trying to get out of the program. I had a couple of good examples of some different goals to some athletes that work with us. So one particular footballer who he's a key position player and he wants to do a marathon, and he is doing a marathon. It's booked in for December. So aerobic capacity is something he's putting in obviously a lot of work in. He'd be running anywhere between 40 and 60 Ks per week. So naturally the strength program is going to need to take a hit. It's going to be sacrificed during that period, but it's really important because he's a footballer. That's his priority year round, is his football. He's doing the marathon as just something separate to focus on, but also to complement his footy, that you still keep in 2 lifts a week. 2 strength sessions a week. You're not expecting results during that period because obviously conditioning is so high, but you're maintaining load. So when you get back into your football type training, your groins are still robust, your hamstrings are strong. You've still got that base underneath you. So then you can start to shift your long distance running towards more football preparation. Whereas if you just went fully marathon mode to then switch to full football mode, you would be at risk for a host of different injuries like an adductor strain, quad strain, calf, just because the level of work that you're doing is so different and the body doesn't love drastic changes. All right. So we need a little bit of variation in our training, but not extreme variation quickly. So we want to make sure that if you are focusing on a marathon or a triathlon in this off season, that you're maintaining your football strength program. That's really, really important. Same thing as if you're doing it over that period to December as well, that you're keeping your football sessions in your touch. So maybe you can involve before you go for a run, you do 20 minutes of football as part of your warm up before you run, for example, to keep the kicking in, keep the marking, the jumping in. Another one that I'm going to read out was more about explosive power. With the season, this I'm just reading out the email. With the season finished, I'm already looking forward to and planning my off season. My aim this pre-season is to improve my explosiveness and power whilst also improve my flexibility, which I'll do yoga and Pilates. I've attached a routine that I put together, and I was hoping to, with all your knowledge in the space, you could look over it and change any or share information of what I could do differently. So the program was really, really good. Had some good balance between strength and power. But for explosive strength, let's call it, working on explosiveness as this athlete identified, when I'm thinking explosive, I'm thinking like your first 3 steps on the footy field. It's that burst. I'm thinking like a hard change of direction. I'm thinking a sprinting effort, an explosive fend off. All those tasks happen rapidly fast. So time is a really important constraint when we're thinking about it. So if you're doing, let's just say, a squat jump with a bar on your back, although it's faster than a back squat, so there is power to it, in that you're generating force quicker than you are with the back squat. It's not quick enough to specifically transfer to your acceleration and your change of direction and your fend off qualities. That's where we need to work on things like reactive strength and explosive strength. So reactive strength would be when we're dealing with the ground. So your plyometrics that I talked about before, like single leg bounds, single leg drop jumps, lateral skater reactive jumps. So you're really working on your ability to be able to generate force quickly and orient yourself off the ground to that real stiffness ability. And that's really important for things like sprinting and change of direction. For improving your explosive strength, isometrics are a really good thing for that quality. So to get really strong neural stimulus, things like a back squat iso or an isometric mid-thigh pull, or for upper body, like a bench press into the pins. So immovable objects, they're overcoming so that it's a fixed weight. No matter how much force you put into the thing, it cannot move. So like let's be in acceleration position against the wall and you're putting as much force into the ground. But the key with explosive strength is you're generating that force as fast as possible. So if we looked at the trace on a force plates, it'd be a really high ramp, peak ramp, not a gradual ramp like max force, for example, which you need to generate max force over time. So the speed aspect, the time aspect is really, really important, because what we know with those explosive tasks like sprinting, change of direction, acceleration is your time that you take to recruit your muscle mass will be 0.1 of a millisecond or 0.2. So it's really, really quick. So that's where a counter movement jump could be 1 second that it takes to recruit those muscle mass. Okay, so it's too slow. The typical power exercises like broad jumps, Olympic lifting, and squat jumps, for example. Everything else in his program was really sound. I didn't make any other adjustments or advice there. So if you're like this particular athlete and you just want some general feedback, or you want to work, and you want consultation during the next 6 weeks, I am available for consults. So just email me or message me on social media to book in a one-on-one call and get feedback like this. We can also go in the gym and I can teach you how to do those plyometric movements, because I know they're quite advanced and the competency of those are really, really important. If you're doing them with poor mechanics and poor execution, and not picking the right drills for where your level of competency is at, then you could do yourself harm and do yourself a risk of injury. It's the exercise selection is critical. If you want more strength adaptations and how to adjust your off-season program, I would recommend checking out episode with us 124, Strength Secrets, Top 10, episode 116, Power for AFL Dominance, and for aerobic adaptations, check out 117 for 4 crucial fitness elements, 114 for AFL fitness training methods, and episode 100 to maximize your fitness for pre-season. Remember the analogy of it's just like there's no such thing as you can't get a quick tan and you can't get quick gains. So take your time, have a program that is consistent over a period of and progressive over your program. It's football specific, and you'll be in a really good